Hello, and welcome to this live stream about Instruo and their oscillators. A bit of a random one-off. I don't have a show title for this, the Getting Started series or rig rundowns or any of that stuff. But I wanted to take the opportunity to talk to Jason and for everyone that's watching to have a chance to ask some questions, having just covered a couple of the oscillators. So, Jason, how's it going?
Going good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll give a little bit of backstory. We won't get, where did you grow up or anything like that. But your first product was the Troika.
Yeah. The first product as Instruo was the Troika, which actually I've got the original here. So this is if anyone's seen the video, this is the first build, which it's got lots of wires hanging off the back of it and stuff. So it was the first. It was a bit temperamental at the time, but yeah, that was the one that ended up in the video. So yeah, I started this company, and I didn't really know what direction to go, and I didn't think things would, how many oscillators are there out there? So I didn't expect this to be something that would sort of pave the way. So I just made the oscillator that I wanted in my system, and I'd been experimenting with a ton of analog designs and stuff, and just let the camera roll when I was building it to do this. I guess it's the nerdiest music video ever made. So it's like 15 minutes of time lapse of schematics getting drawn, boards being laid out, and then soldering SMD stuff by hand.
But I mean, you didn't come into this from nowhere. I mean, I personally don't know much, and again, we won't get too into the kind of history and backstory of it all. But you were working with Qubit beforehand.
Yeah, I was one of the co-founders of Qubit. So we formed that straight out of college. I think I was still studying my final semester at college over in Boston, and yeah, set up there. So that's where I kind of learned the ropes. It was all digital initially, so it was the Nebulae, the Rev 1 that was the first module that I designed. So
yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, so you'd already kind of cut your teeth.
Yeah,
on getting started a bit. Wasn't a completely just new random.
Yeah, it was the first sort of diving into analog circuitry and in a bigger way. Sort of, I spent the basically 6 months to a year previous to that video going out, just doing research, learning, experimenting, breadboarding, and just seeing what would happen. And got a good oscilloscope and just plugged things in.
Yeah. So you moved. Well, Troika was still while you were in the States, wasn't it? But you've since
no, it was that was after I'd moved back, because I was back over. Yeah, I was in the UK, sort of in between visas. Right. Age-old story. I moved back home, and after I'm settled here, moved into a flat in Glasgow. That's when my visa gets approved. So I've had a visa that I've completely underutilized to the US. But, just the odd trip here and there.
I thought because Dark Place manufactured the Troika, the kind of bigger run of that to start with, and here's that first.
That's the one. That's it.
First looking version. Yeah, I thought you were still out there when this came to light.
Yeah, I got to, because I lived in Portland for a while, because after I was Boston based when I started up initially, then spent some time in Brooklyn, and then moved to the West Coast and got to know Josh and all the guys at Dark Place and Maleko, and just sort of got in touch. I put the video out and we got talking, and they hooked me up. Like, they offered, well, we can do the manufacturing, because at the time I was low budget. I was just ordering stuff in, like the faceplate itself, like that was cut and engraved on a CNC machine that I built from a bunch of open specs, which was a bit crude, but I managed to get it to work. And yeah, we just negotiated there, and it was a godsend, because I was able to just focus on design and development and sort of figuring out what direction I want to go with the company, and they handled the manufacturing and distribution. So
yeah. So with Troika, just because someone asked me, I can't remember quite where they commented on which platform.
Yeah,
I was talking to someone having covered the toner and the TSL, which we'll come to shortly. They kind of said, oh, free oscillators is kind of a weird design. It don't quite sit with me. Give me a reason to get it other than multiple of the other oscillators. But I mean, the obvious comparison would be a Model D.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much an East Coast layered voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know for me, there's lots of times where in that kind of East Coast situation, two oscillators kind of isn't enough. Especially if you're stacking things up in unison.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the age-old thing. Like, you know, my first instrument was violin, classical violin, and I still do the occasional session where, you know, I'll be working with someone that wants layered strings on a production. So I'll go in and I'll just, you know, either they'll have lines written or I'll improvise and come up with you know, arrangements that suit the track. And you know, if you record a single violin, it distinctly sounds like a single voice. You double it up, and it's clearly a duet. It takes at least 3 layers of that sort of a voice. And you know, this goes with you know, recording vocals as well. If you triple track a vocal, then you really start to get that ensemble feel. I think you hear more of the average of the target pitch as opposed to you know, hearing two voices, like a double track. So yeah, that was the sort of premise behind it. A lot of the time, if you mix into oscillators, you get that phasing, and it's more. A lot of the time, it can end up you can hear the larger LFO that's generated from it, like that low phasing. Yeah. So especially, you know, with a lot of digital synths, then, you know, if you do that, you detune slightly and you hear that repeating pattern. So a lot of the time, if you know you're stuck with that, then adding a chorus later on down the chain helps that. But with 3 analog oscillators, I found that's you know, it's the sweet spot. It's you can really get a lot of warmth.
Yeah, and I like that with this, you know, decisions were made for it not to be every single waveform out on every single oscillator.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, I don't find it restricted in terms of use, but it's quite stripped back. You know, you've got to make a choice on waveform, and there's one output, and there's a mixer with an out.
Yep.
Switching just to copy down volt per octave tracking, which is really useful. They don't all have pulse width modulation, but again, I don't really find. I guess I'm trying to justify the person that said, you know, 3 quite simple oscillators maybe isn't for me. I don't find I need pulse width modulation on 3 oscillators if I've stacked all of them up.
Yeah.
Kind of gets a bit much.
Yeah, and I rotated the waveforms between the different voices. So between the 3 oscillators, you can use the crossfader to sort of interpolate between any of the you know, the classic waveforms, and then it's the lowest voice that has the PWM as a, you know, as its extra twist, you know, as the second fader.
And that fading works great if you're going into a folder or something after it, because you know, you take a sine in or a triangle and you fold it, but to have something in between or something that's like a sine that's already kind of clipped so it changes its behavior, or taking the bottom oscillator and starting to kind of fade over to a ramp.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun to be had with it. So that led on to toner.
Yep.
Right. So toner, I guess an easy way to think of it is it's an expanded, in all the waves are broken out and there's a folder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's identical core to an oscillator in the Troika.
Yeah, let's pull up an image for toner. One thing I do want to show quickly, actually, before we move over, you've made a I can't remember what you call it, like a front panel kit.
Yeah, I have. Yep.
To swap it out, swap the panel and the knobs out if you want it to look like the new ones.
Yeah, that's it there, down at the bottom.
Yeah, so, well, I was going to say if you're anal about it, but I definitely would be if I was to put them all next to each other. You can make it look like the newer stuff.
Yeah.
What an odd question maybe, because it's kind of slightly outside of the modules themselves, but why go black panels? A lot of people seem to be going black panels at the minute.
Yeah, I know.
Panels as well.
More out of, you know, I had to make a choice because, you know, I've got the source that I use for the black panels, which they're actually FR4, so they're, you know, PCB material. And you know, I do the design, I port it over to Eagle, and then export it as Gerbers. So it's just a weird circuit board that you know, but it's, you know, it's taken me a bit of time finding a place that I you know, I like the particular matte solder mask. And then it's the emerging gold plating on the front. But you know, I do have, you know, the production Troikas. Those are I think it's Metal Photo Cincinnati, a US company that do the faceplates there. So it was kind of a, it came down to personal preference on my part. I mean, I've thought about maybe in the future doing a smaller runs of aluminum faceplates for some of the other modules. I occasionally get asked by someone if I can do silver panels, like all the early harmonies and some of the early, well, the brass Troikas, of course, like the older custom shop stuff. They were milled and engraved in house, which is not the most time efficient process.
No,
I've required that more for specialist prototype stuff. So, but yeah, it was personal preference. I couldn't afford to do runs of both types, and it also makes it harder for retailers as well a lot of the time, because they might want to stock a module, but then if there's two options for them, what one do they go for? Do they order double stock? So it's it can be tricky on that end of things.
Yeah, I've heard that from a few friends at various shops, that they'll get someone saying, I want the silver panel version of this, and they go, I've got 2 black panels in stock, and they aren't interested, and vice versa. You don't seem to be able to win too much when you go for lots of options for that. But I mean, it looks great. That was one of the takeaway comments from Superbooth, and this is just a screenshot from someone's Superbooth video, but it really does look good as a system. And I think obviously not the look of it, people tried it as well and heard it, but yeah, I think it really made an impression at Superbooth. And I think just having a clear aesthetic as well.
I think so, because like that was my second Superbooth. So I did it the previous year, although it was March that year. I think it was a bit earlier in the year, and that was early on. I mean, I basically announced the harmony that Superbooth, and didn't know what to expect with feedback, and I was not kitted out for any reasonable scale of manufacturing. So everything, all the panels were cut in house. So I was selling them direct to people that were just getting in touch and inquiring directly. And yeah, but the difference I felt having a booth, where I had a handful of my modules, a small system, but it was, it was a collection of various other modules, compared to recent Superbooth, where I was able to bring an entire system of Instruo stuff, which a lot of it is still close, but not quite production ready. Like new VCA, random modules, envelope generators. There are a few things in the works, but we managed to get prototypes together for including in the system, and having that massive modules really. The response was great. I was blown away. It was a really good Superbooth. So
yeah. Just interesting point in the chat room. Mark Zeno's mentioned a bit further up in the chat. I'm just having a quick scan through there, that with Troika, can they oscillate each other, and can it be a bit more West Coast?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If having the mix output, a lot of the time I'll use that as my main output, and then I can have various levels of the different voices. But then, say, taking the top 2 oscillators, cross patching those outputs to the linear FM inputs, and you get all sorts of West Coast madness. Or even patching it into the volt per octave, so you got full exponential FM. And then the modulation, you can choose what waveforms and interpolations between the two, so it can get pretty dense. And then with third oscillator, it opens up for second order modulation, so it can get pretty wild. It can get very far from East Coast.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say that there's a nice sign on there, and all of them will give you a sign, so you can kind of fake the free operator FM thing, patching into the linear FM of each. The switching makes that really useful as well, for whether they're all tracking or not. If there's a static modulator somewhere, or the carrier's static and you're modulating it elsewhere, they sound great patching out into PWM as well, audio rate PWM. Really nice. And then putting that back into sync, either the one that you're modulating PWM with, or the other one. There's lots of ways to kind of feedback patch it. Yeah,
it was. I basically sort of learned more actual musically applicable ways of using sync when developing this module, because a lot of times it's there. Often it's soft sync, where it's more for if you're unison tuning oscillators, you can soft sync one to the other to get them, you know, frequency matched. But the three oscillators on the Troika, they're all sawtooth core, so it's all hard sync.
Yeah.
Which, with the three of them, if you're doing combinations of hard syncing between the three, you can get really interesting, you know, formant like overtones and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to be had from it, definitely. It's something I will come back to and do a video on. Jason sent one quite early on, actually, and I haven't done a video yet. There's people about it. You know, it was sent. I checked it out, and it's at the minute, because TSL and Toner are much newer, that have gone for that for video. Pablo in the chat's asked about an ETA on CSL and also Symphonium, which we'll come to both of those later. Pablo, if we don't, when we're starting to wrap up, make sure you press us again for any questions. Likewise for anyone else, if we miss a question, feel free to probe us a bit later on. So I briefly mentioned Toner, and that being the replacement, well, not replacement, the kind of expanded single oscillator. What made you kind of expand it out? Was it something that you felt you wanted?
It was, I never intended it to be a released module, to be honest. It was my first experiment with the timbre wavefolder circuit. So I thought I could do this as a single module, but I might as well, you know, I've got an oscillator core that I know works. So for prototyping, it's going to be easier for me to play about with it in context. So I, you know, sketched out the layout, which, you know, came quicker because I was able to use a lot of the same design elements from the Troika for even for layout, for the, you know, like the loop around the coarse and fine knobs.
Yeah.
So, you know, I accidentally ended up designing my own grid for interface spacing, which has worked out by sheer fluke. But, you know, I've managed to keep it somewhat consistent. I decided to keep, you know, certain things, primary controls like that. For, you know, you can see that in that picture was the tri beside the toner, and, you know, all the coarse knobs are all in line. But yeah, so this was trying out the wavefolder circuit, and I just built it big with, you know, larger 0805 components initially, and I think it was even a strange shaped board. I think it was just like a big L shape, so I could have the thing mounted with the faceplate and still access the circuitry of the wavefolder to try out different values. And yeah, it was a testing ground for experimenting with the wavefolder to see how I could get it to where I wanted it. And yeah, I posted a few Instagram videos and people seemed interested. So
yeah, I think so. Let's just touch on that briefly. So Troika was kind of more, not mass, you know, we're not Behringer, but more mass manufactured by Dark Place in Portland. That went out to all the shops, usual kind of thing. But then also, the usual as well, I guess, as we see in your rack. A lot of this is all just in-house at the minute. Yeah. I'm sure someone will have asked, and if they haven't, I'm sure they will before we finish. What, you know, are people just getting in touch direct to get stuff? Have you got plans for them hitting stores?
Yep. I'm in the works right now with that. So yeah, everything, as I said, is being built in-house. Like even like the current, I'm doing the CSLs in small batches at the moment. So everything is placed, well, you know, the boards are pasted, placed, reflowed in-house, small batches. But there's a manufacturing company in the Glasgow area that I'm working with to scale up production, so I can get that level of things done more automated. So that will allow me to scale up quantities and get them out to retailers. So that's coming soon. There's a few things I'm still figuring out, you know, the business side of things, like figuring out, okay, at what point do I need to VAT register for being a UK company, stuff like that, which is all fun and games. That's the stuff that makes it fun, right?
yeah, paperwork, the actual life getting in the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly if anyone is watching and wants anything, just, you know, get in touch with Jason.
Oh yeah, they're all currently available. The Tona TSL, more so. Like I've got, for the first time ever, I've got stock on shelves, just because the last couple of weeks have sort of been just batch building a lot of things.
Yeah. And the folder on toner, and this is kind of cool, on a complete tangent, because I was going to be shameless as usual and say, go watch the video I did on toner. It's just gone. A little card popped up in the corner there and said, DivKid is now live. That's quite nice. The YouTube does that. If someone stumbles on a video and says, this person's live, you may like it, kind of thing. Very good, YouTube.
Yeah.
So the single core version, my main use of toner was as the root note voice for a 4-voice chord with the harmony and the Troika doing the other 3 voices.
Yep.
Mainly because I like that, especially if it's quite a low, like maybe I've got the root an octave below. I like having a cleaner wave, but then the folder means I can animate it.
Yeah.
And for denser stacked 3rd, 5th, 7ths, I don't feel like every individual voice needs a lot of animation.
Yeah.
If it's polyphonic or paraphonic or whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
But having one of them that will animate more than others with a folder works great. But yeah, linear FM, I mean, it's the same.
It's the same as the Troika, yeah. It's one core of the Troika with the waveforms broken out. It's just, you know, I've warmed to it. Like, it's, I think at the moment it's probably my go-to oscillator when I'm, you know, either, because I teach a sound design course here in Glasgow, so I do a lot of work where I'm, you know, giving like a brief 101 of synthesis methods. So that's my sort of go-to when I'm showing the waveforms, because they're, you know, it's nice and big and playable. All the outputs are clearly labeled. So it's currently my go-to for a lot of purposes, and it's big, it's nice and spread out, so it's easy to interact with directly.
Yeah, that was one of my replies to someone asking about using toner and the TSL together, because you see them in each of the videos that I did. One of them is definitely more cramped, it's half the size. One of them is definitely more wide open, and they've got different cores and slightly different features and sounds. The sync's slightly different, being tri-core and saw-core. So where did TSL come from? Because that kind of bounces off into a new...
So I guess the first TSL prototype I did maybe a year and a half ago now. Very different look. It was much bigger. I think it was... must be about 14 HP, like the very first build. I didn't even do a faceplate for that. I think I've cut something temporarily out of acrylic, but it was just to try the circuit core, the triangle core specifically, just because I was doing more research and just, you know, experimenting with the different oscillation methods, and figured, why not try, you know, that's something, you know, with in mind to blend the two and have what eventually became the CSL, which is one of each core, just for, you know, a bit of contrast and interest, I guess. But the TSL, it was kind of a stepping stone point. I picked the features that I wanted to refine, and after I'd got the triangle core working on that first prototype, and, you know, had it tracking the way I wanted, and the original one I had sawtooth output from that, which is folded using so it's using a CMOS analog switches, so it would then like switch at a certain point. So, you know, you end up with this ramp that had a slight kink in the middle. So I thought, well, I've already got a sawtooth core from the toner, so I'm not too concerned about refining that to get as clean a sawtooth as I can, even though, you know, having the slight imperfection kind of adds a bit of character in itself. But using the triangle to get a cleaner sine wave, and then creating what became the weird waveform in the bottom left.
What is that? I deliberately made a point of going, this weird PWME triangle pyramid stepped thing, and I quite like just calling it a series of words and then thing. I quite like
that's perfectly. I have no idea how to describe it. I think at one point you mentioned it as being a sort of a, you know, bit reduced sine wave, because you still have the outline, but it's very, very crushed to just you know, 2 steps. But yeah, like this, and then it crossfades. So it's got the same sort of crossfading approach as the Troika, but between the double pulse square wave, I guess, and then a waveform that is what was I doing? I'm taking the inversion of the triangle and summing it with the PWM pulses from the other waveform. Yeah, it was just a mix of things I was trying out, and I thought I like that. That's weird. I'll stick with that.
Yeah, well, it's got a unique character. It kind of does like an inverted folding-ish tone at times. It does sound like a crushed sine or triangle that looks kind of like a pyramid, the kind of stair step, quite heavy stair step. It's not like we're gently down sampling.
Yep.
Yeah, more unique. And I like that the sub on there, the square is just a sub.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of tough. There isn't a square that, I mean, you can get it out of the weird thingy.
Yeah, you can get close to a square. There's still a bit of an artifact on each edge because it's all the way. But it's this was also experimenting with frequency dividers to get that sub output. So that was, I kind of prototyped as I was designing and then refined it to get it, to polish it, and people seemed interested again. Same sort of process as the early toner.
Yeah. And in a similar way to, I guess I would kind of patch Troika sometimes. I really like just a patch I enjoy with this. You do it with oscillators that have multiple outputs, but running the sub at -2 octaves into a filter, just any filter that you like, through its own VCA with its own envelope, make that sound like the bass. Take the folder into a low pass gate or a filter again, but with a quite sharp envelope, so it's quite plucky. And then take the weird pyramid crush thing in the bottom left with a slightly longer envelope, and you end up with this really dense triple layer thing where, because it's 2 octaves lower, it separates itself. I mean, it's another octave, so of course it's going to do, but in a way that just the -1 octave doesn't. You can get this idea that there's a bass line playing that isn't the same as the top line, especially if you use multiple gate patterns. So they're going to share the same volt per octave because it's all just from this one TSL. But having maybe a slightly slower gate pattern for the bass and then a quicker pattern on the folder, you almost get like it's almost like arpeggiator over bass line, or you can do some really cool stuff. And there's a lot.
There were points in your video the first time I watched, I was like, how is he doing that? What's going on? Yeah, there's something, I feel like I've barely explored it myself in patching, because I've got, it always happens. You get stuck in your go-to signal flow. So it's seeing what people are now starting to do with the module now that it's out in the world, which is great. It's that's giving me inspiration on how to make music with it now. So it's a lot of fun seeing it out there now.
Couple of bits from the live chat. I am pulling questions out from people. I'm not ignoring the live chat. Simon the Magpie, hello Simon, says big up on the beard for a start.
Cheers.
And just talking about taking nasty sounds and that craziness and having it under volt per octave, and it does work really well. And it's nice patching the sine or the triangle to CV. Let's call it the weird thing in the bottom left, or the folder on the right. There's a lot you can do with it. It's quite nice to play with. One question that we'll come to now, there are a couple from Robert in the chat, but he says, what makes up an oscillator core?
So a sawtooth is deceptively simple. I mean, like that's one of the topics that I cover in some of the classes that I teach is, why are there these 4 waveforms that are just in every synth? And I guess it's because early on they're really easy signals to generate with simple analog circuitry. So a sawtooth, you're just charging a capacitor, shorting it when it reaches a certain point, which discharges it immediately and then recharge. So you end up with this ramp. So that's at the fundamental core, and then it's the basically adding volt per octave tracking over that, so you've got control over the frequency in a musical way, and all the other waveforms are shaped from that. So to get the triangle from the sawtooth, it's folded at a certain point, and a lot of the tweaking that was the development time in the Troika and the Tonal was getting that seam as clean as possible, because the cleaner the triangle, the cleaner the sine wave I could get from that. So it's all kind of cascading, but they're all from the original raw sawtooth wave. The triangle core, so that's charging, and then it's kind of flip flopping, so it just charges, discharges, charges, discharges.
Right.
A lot of the reference circuits I was looking at to learn how to do that. A lot of them were using these really specific, like sort of 6-leg tin can transistor pairs. I think early on I found that I got the last one that Mauser had in stock, which cost me 15 quid for one matched transistor pair. So I was like, okay, this better sound great. Otherwise I've just wasted £15 when it could have cost me, less than 20p for a transistor.
Yeah.
And I think all these old schematics, it's like Electronotes, and there's so many references out there, and they're all old obsolete components, because it's op amps used to cost a fortune. That used to be the investment when you were building a DIY synth. And now modern components, they're all extremely efficient and extremely cheap to get. So a lot of the time developing the TSL was, I just built the first prototype with lots of spaces for different transistor types, and just bought a ton of transistors. I just tried lots of them to see what had the best results. And the one I ended up going for was it's a single, it's tiny. It's this little six-legged in package pre-matched pair. I found that there's still sometimes a bit of an offset, so the triangle can be slightly asymmetrical. So there's a trim pot on there that I've added in to get that calibrated, so I could get the the point as equal as possible. But yeah, that's fundamentally what's at the base of each core. And yeah, it's more the differences are more how the other waveforms are derived from that. So to get the sine wave from the triangle, I'm running it through. It's what I'm now using as the wave shaper and limiter circuit. That's the Tan H3 module that I did. Yeah. So you run a triangle into that, you bring up the knob, and it basically just softens it out and rounds it out to a sine wave. So there's a bit of trim pot calibration to get the overtones as low as possible. So you've got just that fundamental.
Yeah, let's take a quick look at that. Again, this is another video to come kind of thing. Something I've really enjoyed it in feedback loops.
Yeah, that's really where it shines. I mean, I didn't really realize that this circuit, because it's a circuit that I found an example on. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how that works. So breadboarded it and experimented with it. I was like, oh, that's rounding the top off. So just refining until I was happy with the sine shape from a triangle that I was able to get. But it was my friend Sebastian Lexer, he's the co-developer of the Ether module, the Wi-Fi connectivity one. So he's a big Max MSP and PD user, and his background is classical piano, but he now performs with prepared piano. I've seen him a few times playing with a small zither that he has contact mics on, and he's bowing that, he's striking it, and it's now going into modular system. But before, he would use it into max patches, PD patches, and he's using a Tan H object in those programs, which does digitally what the actual Tan H circuit that I'm utilizing does, where as a signal like reaches up to its maximum, it will just rein it in. So if you see the sort of shape on the faceplate where you've got that sort of S bend, that's what it does to a sawtooth wave. So if you run a sawtooth wave in, it will curve it into that and sort of limit the peaks of the positive and negative points of the sawtooth wave. So for feedback, if you're running any signal into that, it acts as a simple one knob limiter.
Yeah.
So for feedback, you can really drive it hard, and it will never. You've got a lot more control. It won't blow up and run away as readily.
Yeah, that and a filter in a delay feedback loop for delay modules that don't have, which to be honest, most of them don't. Filters in their delay feedback already just helps rein it in.
Yeah.
It means I can be a bit freer with either manual or CV control of a filter over a delay's feedback path, and it just keeps everything in check.
Yeah.
Nice on drums as well.
Oh yeah, it's great. I've been using it even as I've got a prototype module that is a microphone preamp that has XLR input, phantom power. So I've been playing with that, just running acoustic sound through that, like miking up a snare drum, and it acts as a, you get similar effects as compression. I mean, it's happening through an entirely different means. It's wave shaping the signal. It's not amplitude reduction, but you get, you can use it in that way. If you're hitting it with like aggressive percussive sounds, it will beef it up a bit, which
yeah, it's great at, like certainly some of the hex inverter mutant drums, like the tone on the first bass drum module he made, will give you such a click and a transient. It will punch through any mix, but it's kind of nice to do that and then clip it a bit in this and kind of push it nearer the body of the kick without turning it down. It's great as a wave shaper for that. And certainly anyone that's recorded any more aggressive kind of drum sounds, there tends to be some distortion on a snare mic. And this kind of mimics that quite nicely as well. And there's 3 of them, super simple. But yeah, it kind of, I guess, an unintended little thing, the triangle to sign shaper.
Did the design for Sebastian, because he was asking, because I've been utilizing this circuit in all my oscillators, and started to integrate it into some filters in the feedback path, just to to rein in the feedback and stabilize the resonance. And Sebastian was asking if I could build it into a module so that he can move start moving away from the laptop in his performance system. So he's now performing with a small modular system. His contact mic's running through, I think he's got 4 or 5 TAN-H modules, so times 3 TAN-H's, and I think he's utilizing the majority of them in his system. I saw him perform a few months back here in Glasgow, and it was great. I mean, he's a superb performer anyway, but the control he had over the feedback, it was extremely musical what he was doing with it.
Simon in the chat, people dipping in and out and asking questions and things, just said, is it like a kind of type of sidechain for dynamics? And I just said, think of it more like a kind of soft clipper. That's the actual mathematical
that's it there
function there. So as you push the gain in, if this was a triangle, that the wave, for example, that's what it's going to do. It's going to almost like soft clip, how a sine would clip to be a square, but without ever having the hard edges. I kind of just think of it as a soft clipper, really, that I can control the level of, and it kind of works. Hard limit on the top, it won't gain reduce, but it's not going to go past it either if you're pushing some signal in.
It's the hardest module to describe what it's doing, because people ask, so what does the TAN-H do? It's like, well, it gives you the tangent of X, which that doesn't help anyone. So I think videos are going to be the best way to describe it. It's been great. A lot of people contact me about it are Max MSP or PD users and use the TAN-H module a lot. So that's been great, because they know what it does. And I've been asking them a lot, like, how would you describe what the TAN-H function is and does in a musical context? And most of the time it's on feedback control. It's on, it's being used as a crude single knob limiter in a lot of instances. And,
but that work with feedback, treat it like a soft distortion. There's a lot of potential uses for it. And just works really well. Putting a VCA in front of it is a nice one. I mean, it's only a slim little 4HP thing, so it's not a huge thing where you think, God, I wish they'd put this on it. It's just a small little utility, but works really well. Having 3 of them is great as well. Do it in stereo and have a spare one or whatever. I tried to fit 4 in, but it was getting too cramped. I wanted to try and keep from having 2 jacks directly side by side, which inevitably happens in a lot of designs. But this one, I'm quite happy with the layout of it. So. So just going back to the TSL, the folder on it is much more. Thinking about that specific, I mentioned it before. Someone said, you've just covered Tonal and TSL. How are they similar? How are they different? And that was kind of the catalyst for us having this chat. That there's Troika as the kind of starting point. There's the Tonal, which expands that. There's TSL, which is the new thing, and then the CSL, which we'll come to briefly. But the folder on this compared to Tonal is much more aggressive.
It is. It started as the same wave folder circuit, but I just left some spaces for during the Tonal development. I took a lot of notes on where were key parts in the circuit to circuit bend or to jump stuff in. So there's a spot in the toner which has a capacitor in it. So the toner's wavefolder is very symmetrical. As you bring it up, if you see on a scope, the peaks of the sine wave sort of fold in on each other at the same rate, and it's very balanced. So it's AC coupled at a certain point of the circuit where, you know, like there's the main gain control, I guess. On the TSL, I ended up shorting that, so it's now DC coupled. So the symmetry has a bit more of an effect, and it just changed the character hugely. I mean, there are a few other tweaks and different values here and there, but yeah, I wanted to, you know, play adding the symmetry control. It's actually the tan H circuit itself. So the way I did it to keep the sine wave separate from the wavefolder one, there are two tan H circuits built into the TSL. So one that is giving you the sine output, the other one that is driving the wavefolder. So the symmetry control is what I would normally have a trim pot on for calibrating any DC offset to get the sine as symmetrical as possible. So it's fixed gain that is being attenuated by the higher of the two bottom right pots. And then the symmetry is actually affecting the tan H circuit. So it's not a clean symmetry bias. It's not pushing the sine wave perfectly. It shapes a bit more. Like if you view it with the wavefolder down on a scope, you'll see that it sort of peaks it in. It doesn't quite give the true shapes that are on the board. I mean, that's theoretically what it should be doing, but the shaping that comes from the tan H symmetry is it's a little bit different. And I found that biasing it negative versus positive, they have very different sonic results. Like you can get a really squelchy, gritty bass sound if you have the symmetry hard left and, you know, quite a deep fold amount.
Yeah, it seems to get kind of throatier on one side to the other, and there's definitely a nice tonal shift, and it does kink. Less not quite perfectly, but it's a great tonal difference on the fold. Is the gain into the folder much higher as well? It seems to fold more and then clip.
Yeah, definitely. That value is significantly higher because I calibrate it so that when the folder's all the way down, it's just, you know, it's just on the brink of pushing. But then I think it's less limited. I think overall it's a lower gain value that's on the toner. So as you patch in, it breaks the normal, and then the pot becomes an attenuator over the fold amount. I mean, that was more a choice just out of space management.
Well, you get both on toner. You've got the slider as the control, and then the attenuator for your in. Does TSL stand for something, Robert, in the chat asked?
It stands for Tiny Oscillator.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah, it's an email I got a while. I think it was one of the original Troikas that went out from the first custom shop batch. I got an email from a friend who bought one that I think he must have emailed from his car, just like voice to text. So, you know, the email at the top, it read, "This sauce later rocks." So just
that's the name.
Flattering, yeah. But yeah, I was like, that's good. I'm keeping that. So yeah, this is the tiny sauce later.
Just blasting through a couple of questions. I've taken note of a few as we've gone. Again, Robert in the chat mentioned quite early on, how much custom work are you doing? You've mentioned custom work before publicly.
At the moment, it's reduced significantly because I'm swamped with building CSLs and scaling up. A lot of my business since I started Instruo was custom stuff where you know, I've got a few friends that I've made that heard that I was doing custom stuff and got in touch. And the performance quantizer, which I think is on modular grid, so that's the single channel quantizer that has the MIDI input jack. That was made for a buddy of mine over in Virginia. So he plays a lot with I think it's a Nord lead keyboard or something like that. So he's like a keyboard player and uses his modular expanded in on that. So he wanted a way to control the enabled notes from his main keyboard. So that was this first design, and I was sort of testing the waters, just seeing what would work as, you know, alternative business models. So worked with him, and he was happy to get the first build one at, you know, at a good price that wasn't really a custom shop price, and he did a ton of work like promoting it and talking about it on forums, and I've sold enough to cover the cost of that. I mean, I'm currently out of stock with the original boards. I need to do a redesign to use the new button type that I've switched to using, the small ones that are on the CSL currently. But yeah, I'm planning another run of them in the future. Probably smaller scale again, because it is a bit more niche. But yeah, like the custom stuff, a lot of it was the brass faceplates, which there are a few guys out there that have got in touch at the right time, and I built entire brass systems for them. So there's a handful of brass harmonies out there, which occasionally see popping up in videos, which is always quite nice. And but yeah, like it's a matter of time at the moment where there's so many ideas people will come to me with. I was like, that's genius. That would be fun to make for starters, but it's finding the time to do it at the moment. So I think once things are scaled up and running a bit more autonomously, where modules are stocked in retailers and I'm able to automate more of that process, that's something I want to revisit more and have that as an option for building weirder stuff that I might only build 10 or 15 of them, but if 10 or 15 of them sell, I can make it work. I can make it viable. Which
yeah. I mean, don't everyone try and hit him with custom work, because people want to do so let him get this stuff out first. Just another quicker one. There's a couple of questions about general design and things like that with the company that I've made note of that we'll come back to at the end. But just thinking of the time free before we kind of put that module to rest and move on. Yeah. Can it be used as part of a no input mixer system?
No input mixer system. The Tanich.
It does. I mean, it's not a level boost.
No, I mean, if you have the knob all the way down and patch in a signal, like say a triangle wave, the output will be that triangle wave, but a slightly reduced amplitude. And then as you turn the knob, it will increase that amplitude and soften it. So maybe about the middle position, it will be a sine wave. And then beyond that, it will start to drive it and clip. The clipping's quite interesting. You end up with not a square. It's sort of it's flat on the bottom. And then you have this sort of like house shape on the top, so it's kind of trapezoidal, I guess. So yeah, it's a bit softer than square, but it's like an overdriven signal. So it doesn't. You can't really use it as a level control so much. So you kind of need it using it in series with a signal that you are then controlling the amplitude of elsewhere. That's the place that I found it works.
If you were doing the no input thing, it would definitely sit in the path well. So patching a channel out through this back into itself would offer some control in that feedback loop.
Yeah.
But thinking of doing it, like people do on just a little Mackie mixer or something, it would be interesting in there, but it wouldn't be like just ramping up the gain, which is an actual signal boost that you can chain. It's slightly different to that.
Yeah. We were briefly demoing it at Superbooth with we had a little small condenser mic. So we just had that going into the input module through a Tanich, and then just driving that and just playing with feedback against the speaker. So if the classic microphone squeal that you'll get, if you have that that loop, put a Tanich in line with that, you can you'll quite easily find a sweet spot where instead of it just running away and blowing up and screaming, it will basically self-oscillate. So you can get that feedback loop, that signal, and have it sit in a controllable way. You reduce the control on the Tanich a bit, it will drop the level. There's a balance point that you can find quite readily that you can't otherwise. It's either positive feedback that's just going to run away, or it will die out. So this way you can get a point where it'll hit a maximum and just limit it, so it will just sit at a constant amplitude.
Yeah. Robert in the chat just asked a few of the questions, and I feel like the whole interview needs an oscilloscope. It does. We need a third chat member that is the Instruo modular lineup with scopes. Yeah. There are scopes in my videos, to be shameless, and there will be for the Tarn Shaper as well, and Troika and anything else that which will be the Mordax data. I should give that thing a shout out. It's in, like I said to Brandon at Mordax when he sent that the data over for future music coverage.
Right.
And said I could have it. Just I work as a freelancer for Future Music magazine, and well, people know it's here. It's stayed here, and it's in every video.
I just bought one last month, so for the last 2 weeks, that's been my main scope for testing and getting getting waveforms set to the right amplitude, stuff like that. It's brilliant.
The quality of it as well, really good. I remember them, pointing it up again. Is it Sigmol scopes or something? Quite high end scopes, if I've got that right. Yeah. Rigol or something. I'm not into that world of electronics, so I don't know. But I remember them pointing it up against a scope that cost a significant amount more than that module, and kind of trying to put it through the ropes. But yeah, that has been in nearly everything. Yeah. Super useful for knowing what you're doing. Obviously, there are other options out there as well, but yeah. So again, Matt Gaines has quite a few questions, all of which I'd like to come back to. Jürgen asked, are you planning on enlarging the Instruo company? We've kind of touched on that. We might just recap again at the end.
Yeah.
And Pablo had asked for an ETA on CSL, which natural progression of the chat, regardless of my little sidesteps elsewhere. So TSL, tiny oscillator, to complex oscillator, I guess.
Yeah, complex oscillator, which chatting to someone who, because it's the S with the little chevron sign above it. That's entirely aesthetic on my part. I just pick weird characters that are hard to type just because
they're hard for YouTube titles. I'm like, should I put it in? Shouldn't I put it in?
Yeah, I think
researching it or not.
But yeah, it's.
I think it's in the tags. I think I've video tagged anything I've done the TSL with both, so it will come up.
Yep, probably a bad business choice all around using weird characters in in the company name and all my product names, but I like the look of them. But anyway, what someone pointed out is that character is supposed to be pronounced sh as an sh. So someone asked me if the actual pronunciation was meant to be seashell, which I read that and I was like, it was one of those moments like, oh, I wish I'd.
Yeah, that should have been.
Yeah. So I started referring to it as that. That's the nickname of it in the shop is we're building seashells this week. So that might become the descriptor for it. So
so I mean, it's got obvious kind of heritage in well, there's no escaping the Buchla 259 dual oscillator, complex oscillator, which things like the DPO are based on, the Verbos, the Sputnik, the fervor generator from Endorphins, which all do sound slightly different, much like picking a filter. They've all got different characters. And I think this kind of takes all of that heritage and it's gone because of your experimentation on toner and TSL specifically. With having a sub that you can sync the other oscillator to and all these kind of extras, it kind of goes up a gear, I think, compared to some.
I tried to include all, I had a wish list of like all the stuff I wanted in it, and I think I got just about all of them in the design. I mean, it's gone through so many iterations on the on the sketchpad. Originally, there was a version that was, I think it was 16 HP. Everything was the tall trimmers, and it was more densely packed, like the TSL, which I don't know. I think the thing that I wanted to retain was the sort of the larger control set that is on the Troika, where it's a bit larger. It's 32 HP, I think, but it's with the knobs. I'm very happy with those Selco knobs because they're larger, but the hat shape, it makes them, you can get your fingers in more easily without bumping the other stuff around it.
If it's just a big kind of, I was going to say fat knob, and now I have, but big, just you've kind of, it's almost like you've got to get, almost like you're holding a tennis ball. You kind of whole hand has to arch around the thing. So yeah, it creates space without making it awkward.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, a lot of the spacing, like the two coarse and fine sets, they're equal height as the top and bottom oscillator on the Troika. So I managed to retain some consistency with some sort of a grid. Everything just sort of went. There's so many different sketches in my Illustrator folder that are various iterations of it. Some smaller, some more HP, some less HP. Yeah, so it was a bit of a back and forth finding what I thought was the best balance.
Are they the same knobs as Sputnik?
I think they might be actually. Yeah, it's surprising how many companies use these knobs, but I think the fact that you get different colors for the main part, and then the caps themselves are separate, so they're like press fit on. So I think I think IntelliGel, I think a few others use this knob type, but they look so different. Like it's only since sourcing them direct and then looking through the catalogs. Oh, right, so that's the cap that's used on the ALM synths. It's great. Like it's a UK based company. I mean, they're manufactured in China, but I got chatting to the rep, and they're based down your way. So
okay,
yeah.
Yeah, good. But yeah, Simon, they are. I thought they looked familiar to the single oscillator that Sputnik made. But yeah, so I mean, it's kind of common practice, but the little tiny shafts, well, they're not knobs, but the pot shafts, the little black ones with the white line on indicators, are for a 10-year version.
Yep.
Only. So, in terms of design, no key parameter. You're not getting your hands on those for key parameters. Yeah,
more set and forget. Yeah.
Some of the other controls do have a bigger knob that are attenuators, though, if I remember right. Again, kind of main controls. So this is effectively the toner saw core for one of the oscillators, and the TSL triangle core on the bottom, right? Yeah,
exactly.
So best of both in terms of syncing. One's hard sync, one's soft.
Yep, and you can route that. So the sync button, one press will set it to an amber color. So and that will be the lower oscillator, the triangle core soft synced to the top. One more press and it's white, and that's the top hard sync to the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there are a few to kind of unlock the depth of this thing. There are a few bits of buttons to press. It doesn't look like there's a lot to learn particularly, but what are some of the kind of button combo stuff? Like there's a button by the sub. What's that one doing? Is it select?
By the sub? Yeah, so the sub, that will cycle through the square wave being the original frequency, and then 1 octave below, and then 2 octaves below. So all the buttons, their labelings indicate the top layer functionality. The mod button at the top PWM, that will route the sine waves of both oscillators to the opposite one's PWM control, so you can have modulation of the duty cycle without needing to patch. Sync LFO will it switches on a DC negative DC offset into the sawtooth core and just drops it down to LFO range. Link will enable routing internally, so that if you have a volt per octave signal patched into either of the volt per octave ins, it will control both oscillators simultaneously. And then the index control. So this is where there's a sort of a layer of a control scheme. If you hold down the index button, that becomes like a shift button, and all the buttons will either be lit or unlit. They'll be slightly dimmer to sort of differentiate that hierarchy. If you look at the 4 outer buttons, LFO, mod, sub, and link, those kind of map corner to corner to the 4 center tall trimmer pots, the attenuverters. So you have the symmetry and wavefold CV, and symmetry and wavefold CV on the bottom. So if you're holding the index button and enable or disable any of those, that's going to be sending the sine waves from each oscillator through internal VCAs that are controlled from the index control to any of the destinations that are lit or unlit. So it sounds more complicated than it is. I drew up an infographic at one point. I'm still working on the full user manual. The video that I put out fairly recently, that kind of, it's a long one. It's about 40 minutes long, but I go through all the features in depth there.
Yeah. I'll pull that up. And it didn't seem or feel complicated at Superbooth, but
cool.
To have all the kind of extras that take this further, things around being able to mix waveforms before they hit the folder.
Yeah. So the symmetry control, if you enable that, so say we're listening to the top final output, so the Sawtooth core's final output. If we I'll grab a module here so I can see what I'm talking about. And you hold the index button and tap the LFO button. That will enable the sine wave from the lower oscillator, amplitude controlled via the index pot, going to the basically going to the normal connection of the CV input of the wavefold control.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was talking about symmetry. So no, the other one. So it's going to the symmetry input where you can then use the attenuverter to control the amplitude further. So you basically, if you have the fader all the way down, turn up the index and have the attenuverter up a bit, you basically have the lower oscillator sine wave going into the top oscillator's wavefolder. So you can listen to that and just control that as the wavefolder that you're listening to. But then as you bring the fader up, you're going to be summing both oscillator sine waves just before the wavefolder, and that's where it gets really interesting. You get some really cool timbres. Like it's sort of if you have you can get extremely powerful formant type sounds, where if you have like a high pitch setting on the signal that you're summing in and then bring up the lower one, then you get all these like formant type overtones. It's really gets really interesting.
Yeah, so not one of my videos, but definitely one to go watch, as Jason just mentioned. I'll pull it up. So on the official Instruo YouTube, I'll put links to all this in the description. In fact, I can link this in the chat room now as well.
Cool.
YouTube does block links from everyone, bar I think if you assign a moderator and the person that started the chat. But yeah, and in the video, Jason, there's a scope there. We can see that kind of pyramid weird thing that I mentioned that TSL does. You can see the module. There's a graphic on screen. About 40 minutes long. Really good walkthrough of a huge range of tones. Each kind of 3 or 4 minutes that pass, if you had the module in front of you, is worthy of stopping and going, right, that's what I'm doing this evening. And just getting into that. And then the next day going, right, I'm going to look at 6 minutes to 10 minutes, and then I'm going to really nail that. Because there's just, it's things like that, mixing waves before a folder.
Yeah. Yeah, but I didn't know what it would sound like. That was kind of a conceptual idea when I was designing it. I was like, oh yeah, if I have it routable there, I don't really know how it will sound, but it'll do something. And it turned to be, one of the more interesting features is that sine wave summing before the wavefolder.
It's not something we mix into filters a lot of the time. Oscillator or several mixer filter is really common. Folder, we tend to stick to just sine or triangle. For feeling adventurous, but it tends not to be a kind of common go-to thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely say to watch that video. Pablo did ask earlier an ETA on these. The first batch has gone out.
The second batch has gone out. I shipped out shipped out a lot on Saturday morning. I'm building them as quickly as I can. I'm now fully in stock with all the materials. So I've got a few guys that are buddies of mine in Glasgow. So they're in helping build. So I'm able to turn around 10 to 15 a week at the moment. So like they've been going quickly. There's a bit of a waiting list, but I've been quoting to people that I'm trying to keep it within 2 to 3 week turnaround time from payment being made. So there are a few people I'm still to send invoices out to. So I'm trying to not overload myself with I need to build this many. So it's been nonstop since Superbooth, but I've doing them small scale like this, I'm able to get them into people's hands. In the meantime.
Yeah. But I mean, for that, if people are really curious about what it does, this looks maybe a bit more abstract of a concept. Never mind the specifics of the module. Go back and look at Buchla 259. That's the kind of origin of a complex oscillator.
Yeah.
2 oscillators with some kind of modulation bus for AM and FM. This breaks it out into different types of rectification and ring mod. There's subs on there. We can audio rate the pulse width modulation of one over the other. Does pulse width carry through to the subs at all?
Not to the sub. The sub is just a 50/50 duty cycle of it. When you hard sync the top oscillator from the bottom, it's synced from the sub output. So as you cycle through those sub frequencies, you're changing the sync rate. which
Yeah.
yeah, gets quite fun. You know, at the press of a button, you can immediately get some different timbres from it.
Yeah, it's a funny one. There's no right way to go, I guess, with stuff like that. But if I want a sub on something, and we were just talking briefly before we started about the Erica Sims graphic VCO, and I was saying how nice it is that that sub can be a different wave that either is or isn't affected by other things on that module. It's nice that it isn't, because if you're going to go really bonkers with like audio rate, PWM, I feel like just having a sturdy sub underneath it is useful. It helps just pin things down a bit musically. Same if you're really going kind of hard into a wave folder to the point you lose the fundamental. It's nice to just have one of the plane waves or a sub underneath it.
Yeah.
So yeah, for CSL, there's certainly been more content as people get them. It's up on Modular Grid. It's on the Instruo site as well, and that video that I mentioned and have linked. I'll link all this in the description as well. So in terms of kind of analog oscillators, we've gone through them all. No more for a while, I guess.
Say that. You know, I've got ideas. I've got many ideas. There's one thing that I found when I was experimenting with the early toner, which is something that I definitely want to try out, is so there was a way for generating the even harmonics wave shape. So that's kind of, you know, it's kind of like that split sine shape that, you know, on an FFT you have fundamental and then all the even partials. So, you know, like the spectral inverse of a square wave. To get that, the way that I did it initially was taking a sine wave and mixing it at a certain ratio with a twice frequency sawtooth or ramp, whatever inversion it was of that. That would give that, you know, pretty close to that result. I did that on the, you know, on one of the original like test builds of a triangle core that I did, and I thought that's pretty cool. So there's, you know, this, you know, there's a circuit that I used to give me the twice frequency sawtooth from this original triangle signal core. So what I'm thinking is, I've already got the folder that gives me a triangle from a sawtooth, so I might try something that is taking the triangle core, creating the sawtooth from that, folding, you know, or creating the twice frequency saw from that, bringing that into a triangle wave, and doing the same thing. And it's going to be, it would end up being a big schematic, but I would end up with 3 or 4 parallel voices, you know, in higher octaves, which I could then shape those into sine waves or anything, and do something that is not just a sub square, but having multiple simultaneous tracking octaves of different waveforms, which
so it becomes, I mean, it's not additive synthesis. That Mark Doty had a big about this recently, about what is and isn't an additive synth. But additive synthesis is individual harmonics over each individual harmonic. But I was going to say it becomes quite additive in nature, this idea of stacking oscillators at different waves. As well, you could cascade those down like you could on the Troika in terms of modulation. So that's something that's been on my mind. I want to try that just to see what weirdness I could get out of that. And then there are multiple things. There are inevitably more oscillators to come. But fair enough. Same question. Pablo asked about the CSL's ETA, which we just said second batch is out, batches are coming. Roughly kind of 10 or 15 a week, couple of week turnaround. We also asked about Symphonion.
There's a bit of a hold up at the moment. We're trying to figure out some logistics at the moment. So again, apologies for the wait for everyone that's been inquiring. A lot of the hardware is largely done. You know, components are coming in. There's just a few things that we're trying to figure out so that it's ready to go. But so there'll be news coming. A few things to figure out.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, is this kind of next after CSL, or is something else going to come out first?
There's a few things that are sort of close. Yeah, there are several things that are close. There's a filter that has been in the works for a couple of years now, just about. That I've only recently got to I managed to get a faceplate together and a first revision to show at Superbooth as well. So it's a multi-mode filter, which I'm quite excited about. It's as I said, it's utilizing the tan H in the circuitry, so that it's got like really stable feedback and a bit of wave shaping on the input, stuff like that. So there's a few things, because I'm working with various collaborators on a few different designs. So like the CSL, that's been my sort of passion project, like on the side. Actually, it was when I was on holiday and I was just had the laptop with me and was finalizing all the design files there. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, I don't get a chance to do this. Normally I'm just building stuff. So this is my holiday. And,
I've got I guess there's no harm in saying, I'm not going to really say much of what it is, but I've got Manu at Bufaco doing something for me at the minute. And he's doing it when he's not working at Bufaco. So it's like his holiday time is like the passion project kind of, well, my passion project, and I'm probing Manu for it. I love that, how like, friends will go away for a week in some cottage somewhere and just, completely try to take a break. No, barely any phone signal, either up in the north of Scotland somewhere or out in Wales. And they'll come back and like, oh, I finished an album. I'm like, you were on holiday? And they're like, yeah, but I didn't have any internet. So I was just, I took a little case or a laptop and I've got all this stuff, or I've made a sample pack, or I've done all this Foley work, or it's kind of like playtime.
Yeah.
It still kind of is work.
If I'm stuck on a long flight, that's some of the best times to get circuit boards done, because a lot of the time, once the schematic's done, especially, it's just a case of, I know where the bigger hardware needs to go, I know where the knobs, jacks, switches are. It's just a case of laying out all the SMD footprints and then routing it all. So sitting on a long flight, the flight's over like that, and I need more time to finish the layout. So
well, Voodoo Bull in the chat, who's Nigel Mullaney, real kind of pleasure to have him as a friend and part of the scene and things. He's quite prolific in his output anyway, for other work, but he'll be like, oh, I'm off to the cabin for a week. And we'll do the same. We'll come back and just, he's like, oh yeah, I made a track every day, or I finished this while I was there. It's just that time away, I think.
The CSL was finished at the end of a holiday in February. The harmony was the same, actually. It was I was in a cottage on the East Coast and just no internet, and just worked on that. We had like a nice French windows looking straight out onto the beach, so just good food and lots of late nights just working on circuit boards. But I don't know, it's oddly relaxing.
It's weird.
Family are like, you should take a break. It's like, this is my break. This is the fun part.
And there's this kind of weird. A friend kind of coined the term of productive procrastination. I very much do that when I know I've got something to do. I will, again, just off air. Most people tend to know that I'm teaching music in various guises at schools and colleges. If there's a load of marking to do that evening and I've got a video to edit, I will edit that video like I've never edited video before, because I'm avoiding the other work, and vice versa. If something comes in, and it's good because it all kind of pushes each other around, and it pushes the fun stuff as well. Nigel, Voodoo Bull in the chat says, when he got his harmony, he ran to the hills for 2 weeks.
Brilliant.
I'm sure he wants to do the same with Symphonion as well when that comes. So there's been a couple of more general kind of overarching questions. Couple from Matt Gain in the chat says he's having lots of problems making visually interesting panels for his modules. I think he's on a new venture making modules, from what I can gather in the chat.
I've been following his stuff on. It was a Pusherman release, I think he did. It was like the in a tiny version. It's great. I think I chatted to Matt briefly on Instagram a while back, and like he's been churning stuff out by the looks of it.
Right.
As far as like panel design, like that's it. I don't have any formal training as a graphic designer or anything. It's just trial and error, trial and improvement. Like I'll just lay something out. I think it's taken practice. Like the first module designs I ever did, all the knobs were way too close. The jacks were way too close. It didn't make any sense. And it's just, learning through mistakes. I think at this point I've got a few dimensions that I try to stick by. So if I've got larger, higher priority knobs or controls, then I'll just have them in a bit more of a prominent position. There's so many. There's no right or wrong way. I don't think lots of design modules they'll have like a dedicated patch bay area, or like, you know, a lot of the mutable stuff. It's all the mutable stuff. It's all the, you know, the cables along the bottom, and then all the, you know, the higher priority controls up top. Mine are kind of just strewn about everywhere. You know, jacks are just in and around all over the place, which I like. I think, you know, like some of the ways that I use it, like I sort of design it with, oh, a lot of the time I'll have that patched in there, so that'll free me up for control with these knobs. And it's yeah, what I've grown to do is just try and trust my own instincts a bit more. Like I design, you know, first and foremost, I'm designing what I think, what I want to make music with. Like the harmony was kind of the, you know, the big development that you know, is a lot of my, you know, music background built into a module, and it had various different prototype iterations over time, and it was, you know, it took a lot of runs to find the layout that I felt worked best for me. Yeah, in Eagle, I just, you know, I'll start by placing out like all the larger hardware components, and I'll just draw on like the measure layer or document layer, just draw the diameters of the actual knobs that I want, and just try and eyeball it as close as possible so that it's, you know, I think it's going to be playable. I've got a few like libraries that a library that I've built up in Illustrator of all the knobs. So I've got like a, you know, rendered mock-ups that I'll do of developments as I go. So I kind of jump between laying out a manageable component placement for pots and jacks, and then jump over to Illustrator, try, you know, test layout to see aesthetically if it sort of sits right for me. But I don't know, like I know when I've got it, but it's getting to it that sort of just takes a lot of moving stuff around and experimenting.
Yeah. Another question from Matt said, how are you manufacturing batches of modules, you know, effectively just building these yourselves without eventually hating it? Having built 8 clouds recently, he never wants to touch that build again.
Pasting and placing, that's the most efficient way. I'm using for prototypes, I'll use a hot plate, so it's hot plate reflow. I guess just mixing it up, like when it gets too much, just switch gears, jump over to Eagle, and just work on the next thing, and just keep it busy. And otherwise, podcasts, lots and lots and lots of podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do any, you know, I barely ever do any DIY at all. You know, the soldering iron's not even turned on once every month for me. But the amount of times I've heard myself say, hello, module company, modular name, let's check it out, is ridiculous. So in a similar way, yeah, it tends to be, and Ken, Flux302, hey Ken, in the chat, I saw you had a little movie on in the background. We're working on some sounds and presets, and I kind of jokingly said, looks like you're working really hard. But it's the same kind of thing for me. Any kind of, not distraction, but just something that kind of makes a cog keep going in the brain. You know, I can't listen to music while I've got patches going, but I can have talk podcasts on while I'm doing something else. Or, you know, try and streamline everything as much as possible, as I'm sure you do with the building.
Yeah.
And just jumping around.
Yeah, changing it up if it's getting too much. I mean, it's great. Like I've got you know, as I said, a few collaborators and close friends that I'm now working with in the workshop. So it's great. Like, you know, there's a new series on BBC Radio 4, I think, with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Can recommend that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just mixing up, having company while you're doing it. So if you've got people that are also into building, just to hang out, because then it doesn't feel like work. It's when, you know, when you're just at it alone for hours at a time, that's where it gets, you know,
yeah,
you start to lose it a little bit.
I mean, there was a little chat, a question about what video editing I use. I use Final Cut. You know, send me a message if you want to talk about what I'm using or anything. Happy to answer here, of course. But yeah, I use Final Cut. Any more than that, we can chat. But when I started, I was borrowing a camera from where I work, and I was going into work at like 6:30 in the morning at school, working till 8 when it started, stay until the end of the school day at 3, and then stay until 6:30 at night to edit on a computer, because I didn't have a PC worthy of, or a Mac worthy of editing video. But then I realized my friend's brother had a decent PC for video editing, and also had an Xbox. And I was kind of not playing any games at all at that point. You know, I didn't have an up-to-date console or anything. So we'd go around there in an evening, and the evening would be I'd edit until it was my go to play on something, and then I would sit back and edit. So rather than kind of all sitting and, you know, just having a drink or some food or whatever, you would kind of cycle around. And I did that for a while, and it kind of worked. You know, but it meant I could be up very early working and keep going all night, and just by having some kind of sanity between.
The tail end of when I was still doing the CNC like custom faceplates, it was quite late in the game with the Nintendo Switch, but you know, I got that and the new Zelda, so that's what made that bearable, doing sitting at a CNC machine, because, you know, once it was running the G code, I had to just let it do its thing and hope it didn't screw up. But a lot of the time, you know, I had to be there to just keep track of where it's at, and sometimes like stop it and then like load the next run of code. But yeah, like finding a balance, because that's, you know, I think I'm only now starting to, like, since graduating college, like now starting to get more of a balance of creativity and like the design stuff. So, you know, like creative as in making more music, because we now Kian, who works with me in here, the two of us have been running the Glasgow Powwow live streams.
Yes.
Which we're long overdue doing the third one. We've run 2 so far, and they've been great fun. And it's
they've been good.
Yeah, having a show, having something to aim towards, it really forces you to get creative. So yeah, we're planning the next one for hopefully early August. I think that's the plan.
Yeah, I mean, generally for that thing, it sounds like a kind of lame motivational coachy kind of thing, but just for me, just keeping at it, keep putting stuff out, just keep doing stuff, keep letting people see it. And, you know, life's going to throw stuff at you. Some of it's more work than it maybe should be. Just adjusting. I don't think it shows in the videos, but certainly other areas of work, my music suffered with the amount of videos that I'm doing, and I'm just trying to get some balance back. But I get great kind of creative satisfaction out of making patches in videos. Nigel, that was in the chat earlier, there was one track, I was like, oh man, that riff, we've got to make a track out of that riff. And it was just, you know, it was 20 seconds of a filter demo or something. So I find trying to find my own personal satisfaction in all this kind of sea of work that comes. It just takes some adjusting, and it takes a few years, I think, whatever it is, to kind of get used to it. Another question from Matt Gaines, saying a bit of a follow-up to earlier. How are you getting the panels fabricated? The gold color makes me think they aren't PCBs, but they are, right?
They are PCBs. Yeah, it's the Inig immersion gold finish, which bumps the price up considerably. Yeah.
So is that nearer the price of an aluminium panel, or is it still not?
I've not done a direct comparison like with quotes, but is. Yeah, I mean, like, especially when I'm doing smaller runs of stuff, like the price per panel, it gets pretty high, but it's manageable. And I mean, you know, I'm very happy with the aesthetic, so I'm happy having that as, you know, part of the manufacturing cost. Yeah.
I know the price and availability were a big one in a lot of companies going for PCB panels over metal recently. Yeah. Some have for a long time. There's a few that have made more recent switches. I think, Ken's just popped up in the chat saying PCB panels don't bother him at all. They don't mean, you know, they were rarer 3 or 4 years ago. But, you know, I don't mind the wooden panels from Bastel, and they got really kind of slammed on. They're about 1 mil or 2 thicker than anything else, so they do just stand up a little bit, and you sometimes need, if you've only got 6 mil screws, you sometimes need an 8 mil screw, or you can't use a washer or whatever. And they flex a little bit, but, you know, I'm pretty easy on that kind of thing.
The weight saving as well, like the CSL, it's, you know, it's a reasonably heavy module, like just from the number of metal shaft pots on it. But the faceplates, the FR4 faceplates are very light compared to even just aluminium. The brass ones, that's one thing that I didn't consider when, you know, planning to do the first brass faceplate modules that I did. It adds a lot of weight. It's I think, yeah, not this last Superbooth, the one before. I had a lot of brass modules in my system, and that as my carry-on was brutal. It's it does not make for a portable system.
No, I've got well, I said yes to a Eurorack yoga session at a festival in about 5 weeks. And just lugging around a 12U case, even just like from under the desk and up full, is not fun. So yeah, anything to make this stuff lighter. Wood is a weak choice. My Bastles are aluminium from Ed Random. Yeah, the new aluminium Bastel looks great. I'm sure it feels a bit more sturdy as well. I like the blue on their modules. But yeah, let's kind of do a last call for questions in the chat. There is about a 30-second lag usually, but any questions that I either haven't answered or asked Jason, or that you want to ask, fire away. What I did want to touch on, and I did briefly touch on it in our little video at Superbooth, is it the Neonic?
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot. It very much is something you're playing around with. It's not coming soon. It's not close. It's a kind of bit of a platform you're playing with. But anything with a load of sliders on tends to grab people's attention.
Yeah, I noticed that. There was a lot of interest in it at Superbooth, and I kept having to apologize and say this is one of only 3 that exist currently. Yeah, it was an experiment. It was again a custom build for a friend who wanted initially just manual CV controls to use over the ER301. So you could break out and have manual control over the parameters on the sampler. And I just sort of experimented with it. I was like, oh, what if we added slew over that? So if you were, you could just, instead of just rapid, manually slewing it, you could do that. And then that branched into, well, if I make it an input and an output per fader, then you can patch a signal in. It becomes an attenuator plus slew limiter over that signal. I could then buffer that and split it and then have it go through analog switch matrix to have them sum. So I could use a few channels as a mixer while keeping some as manual fader. I could add a microcontroller onto it. I could then have it reading, reading the CV levels and run it as some sort of sequencer. Yeah, it just kept growing. It was, feature creep is the this is case in point of feature creep. But I've learned a lot from it, and it's turned out to be an extremely useful module. I mean, I use it in my test system all the time because all the time I'm testing CV. So it's like, okay, I can run a quick sequence. I can mix signals. I can just test CV with a 0 to 5 volt fader. So there's going to be a significant hardware revision in the future where I'm just going to improve the audio signal path, probably increase the processor power for the the digital elements. So hopefully have some more versatile CV outputs that are some sort of digital control. So maybe you could store a sequence or have geophonic sequences, stuff like that. Yeah, still figuring out how to approach it, but there's definitely something there from just playing with that build. So yeah, any suggestions on features, let me know, because it's a strange one. It's an interesting module.
Yeah, I'm very much curious about it as well. Matt Gaines asked and was great enough to send over this little portable case, and I'm going to kind of sticker bomb it. I am not stupidly deep, but I got into a conversation about varnishing it, then stickering it, then varnishing it, or painting it, varnishing it, stickering it, or painting it, and ended up back and forth about, I'm going to say it wasn't polyethylene, but some chemical word with Ross Lamond, basically about varnishing wood.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I can understand this stuff, but I had no idea what Ross Lamond said. So I'm going to kind of put this little case together. But really cool, a massively over-spec, just something to give a little shout out. It's Tom Whitwell's USB like lunchbox power, nice. but quite massively over-spec'd in terms of that original current. So the idea of just running like 4 small modules on it, you can put some fairly power-hungry stuff in and be totally fine from a USB power bank or whatever. So yeah, I should give Matt a little shout out for that. I'm going to make a video about the whole kind of process, which is effectively Matt sent this cool case. The end. And all I need to do is finish it with, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, pin it or sticker it or whatever. But yeah, one, I guess a big question for us to kind of finish on. Ken Flux 302 said, any plans to make a standalone synth, non-modular? And Robert Rhodes Music said he would sell his soul for an Instruo designed polysynth.
Polysynth. Can't don't know about polysynth so much, but I have a few things in the works that are going to be more like self-contained systems.
A little not to say you'll rebuild it to these specs or anything, but a little Instruo style no cost could be very interesting.
Yeah, there are a few things I'm approaching. Like there's one that's coming more from the education element of what I do, where so I currently teach a sound design course. If you search for Shugle Studios, Glasgow, it's run by a good friend of mine, Simon Stokes, who is Ableton certified trainer here in Glasgow, and he's been running this for a number of years now. Sort of introducers courses for, for a lot. He's a techno guy, so he goes by Petrichor. So he's signed to Soma Records. So the school itself is actually affiliated with the Soma, so it runs as the Soma school. So I must be about just over a year now. I've been teaching the designer course, the sound design course, where my main platform has been Softube Modular. So students that come in the course, that's the interface that I use. So I basically teach synthesis, so subtractive through FM, and I try and keep it a lot of all my foundation is done teaching using a modular environment, because then once you know how to patch and integrate with all the basic building blocks, you can sit down at any synth and know, okay, so that's the oscillators, that's a filter, that's a signal flow, and there are a few methods that I sort of developed, sort of that stood out to me for how things resonated with me when I was learning synthesis at college and just experimenting. So my plan is to develop a system, an instrument that will be the main system that people are learning synthesis on, and then integrating that with Ableton Live, with the VCV rack, and a few other things. So it'll end up being a very powerful in-one system. I don't know about the viability of it as a more commercial product, but it's going to be a fun thing to do. We're going to call it the Shugle, so it'll be the Instruo Shugle system. But yeah, Sketch at the moment, it's going to have at least 5 oscillators, and basically all the modules built into it. There'll be some normalization, built in, like audio and MIDI over CV, so you can just patch it straight into Ableton and start playing with it. Because what I found using virtual environments like Softube, like VCV Rack, is especially students that are new to patching, new to modular, if they open up a fresh thing, a lot of the time, it's blank, they're having to populate it with modules. So that's kind of another layer of where do I start? Whereas if I've got something that I know inside out that I'm comfortable teaching, you can do all these, and I'll have a lot of coursework to give examples of how to do it. A lot of it's going to be taught through experimentation and ear training. So okay, so this sound here, this is and basically putting a sound and character to the different terms. So PWM, what does that sound like? What is linear FM versus exponential FM? Things like that, and just sort of building it up in a more music foundation, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, my teaching at college, it's further education, so 16 plus. For anyone that knows the UK system, a level 3 course. It's not a separate kind of evening course or anything. It's standard college kind of A-level level stuff. And there's people into making electronic music, but me taking a modular in is near enough pointless. They may be interested, it may be a fun afternoon, but it isn't going to be a great platform for them to learn on in the time that I would have to actually show them modular. It would more, I could have an afternoon workshop and that would be about it. So I think all these kind of, like a no-cost, Mother 32, all the kind of semi-modular stuff, but then trying to tailor that to learning synthesis.
Yeah.
Which maybe the audience here and us, it's not really for us. It's for people getting into it. But you know, rewind to when we got into it.
Mm-hmm.
A case of modular wouldn't have been suitable. Wouldn't have been for me if someone just went, "This is how you build a synth patch." It would have been way too much. So I think the software environments are a great way to go, and anything else that, and as well when they sound great as well. You know, however simple it is, even if it's made for learning, not that this is educational, but just there is a SH09 Roland. Really love the sound of it. Prefer it over an SH101. It's the thing. One of the mono synths I kept from getting into this stuff before modular. But it's just a single oscillator, single envelope, super simple, but it just sounds good. And I saw Finley at Future Sound Systems was he was making something for a workshop as well.
Yeah,
might have been a DIY build thing, and again it really kind of growled. I don't know if because it was primitive, like it made it so basic in terms of circuit, because that was more about learning electronics, I think.
Got it.
Cool. Just had this edge to it. And the Glasgow makes some noise stuff as well. Is kind of deceptively simple, the pure modular system.
Yeah.
Some really cool stuff to be had with that as well. Had one of their systems for a while, and because it's simple, I found it made me patch a little bit differently, and I was trying to push things a little bit because I didn't have so many envelopes, or maybe the ins and outs on the filter were slightly simple, or I didn't have a mixer, or I can't quite remember what the restrictions were in the pure modular system, but yeah, it just works really well.
Yeah, there's a great scene here in Glasgow. There's the CCA, the Centre for Contemporary Arts. Every Saturday, there's a sort of there's a pretty regular group that hang out. There's a soldering workshop room that people are building a bunch of DIY stuff, and it's really cool. Like I was helping like sort of run that for a while with a friend of mine who has jumped ship and moved back to Greece, but he was Glasgow based for a while. So I'm still trying to convince him to move back over. So if he's watching at any point, then he knows what's up.
Yeah, cool. Well, a couple of things just to wrap up on. I think we've touched on everything and all the questions, but modular meets Leeds.
He is in the chat.
Yeah, Petro's there with his little teary eye. I don't know him, but he looks so sad with a little emoji. Yeah, modular meets Leeds. The event that I run with, not just me. There's always people helping behind the scenes. But modular meets is the deliberately vague kind of brand of modular event that I uphold. Modular meets Leeds is, I don't kind of want to sound like I've got an ego, and I always downplay things, but one of, if not the biggest, kind of independent UK synth events. There's also Brighton Modular, which is next weekend or 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think so. I'm away somewhere doing something.
Yeah, end of the month and into the 1st of July is Brighton Modular. So for anyone that can get there, definitely go to Brighton Modular. A really big event. They've got lots of extra things going on in a great space in the University of Sussex. But Leeds, Jason will be there. So it's a mixture. I guess it's, someone said, is it a trade show? And I was like, well, no, not really. I mean, we started a few years ago as a completely there was an Electron event from the Electronauts Forum the weekend before I held a synth event in the same venue at Belgrave Music Hall in Leeds, in West Yorkshire in England, close to where I am. So we all kind of sound more like me. Those that get into my accent on videos, marble mouth, as Ken would say. Ken called me marble mouth, and it's stuck with me because he's more marble mouth than me, with this like thick Baltimore thing going on, or wherever Ken's from. But anyway, so Modular Meets Leeds started as a completely user event. 15 of us that had kind of just met on Muffwiggler or Facebook groups. Manufacturers getting involved. There are manufacturers there. There'll be a shop or two there. Rubber Dub will be coming down, who are great. Instruo will be there with a system to check out. Going to do some kind of presentation or talk on the second.
Yeah, still figuring out what. There's so many modules to focus on at the moment. So I'll have something together. There'll be a lot of demos to give. But yeah, but it's yeah, I did Leeds last year, and it's a great format. I mean, like Superbooth, I didn't get a break. I was on the floor giving demos non-stop. But you break it up so that there's performances happening throughout the event. So it gives exhibitors a chance to, everyone just sort of stops and listens and enjoys the concert, and then picks up afterwards. So it's a really nice way to break up the event, and you don't feel like you're missing out because you catch it all. So it's good format.
Yeah. Well, it's got quite busy with it's August 11th and August 12th. Everything's completely free. So we open kind of midday on the Saturday. There'll be users that have brought some stuff. There's usually some 5U. There'll definitely be some 5U. There was an original 60s Moog modular 2 years back. And Tom that brought that was like, yeah, I might bring a CS80 this year. What else do you think people will want to play on? So there's always some really rare stuff that most of us have never seen in the room before. There'll be a ton of Eurorack stuff. We've got Finlay from Future Sound Systems coming up. Jason's going to be there, Instruo. I think Abstract Data are coming, possibly Salisbury Sims. A few of the UK and a couple of EU guys as well. I'll be confirming things very soon on my social pages and Modular Meets. Just put Modular Meets and you'll find it. But yeah, the Saturday will open up midday. We've got short performances of like 15, 20 minutes through the day. Try to get a range of different styles of modular performance. Everything will be filmed. All of the Modular Meets lead stuff is on my page from last year. Massive raffle. And I can say with confidence, it is definitely the world's biggest modular raffle in terms of the amount of prizes you can win. I'm really proud of that. It's a ton. It takes like an hour to get through the raffle.
That was most of the event last year, I think.
Yeah. So but around 4 o'clock on the Saturday, we'll stop. It's a great laugh because it tends to be a few people will win more than once, and they'll kind of just go, oh, I've just won a module. Who wants this? And stuff ends up, gets a little bit crazy. But yeah, a ton of gear. People like Jason have just been so generous with their equipment, time, the support for the event. There'll be a ton of modules to win. You can't enter if you're not there. If you buy tickets and then you go away, they're not valid. You have to be in the room at the time. All the proceeds from the raffle tickets, they're £1 each, will go to Hoot, a creative music and creative arts charity, very close in Huddersfield, which is really quite close to the event. Do a lot of great work with the community and disabled people and children as well. So yeah, there'll be a ton of modules to win. The Sunday, the 12th of August, will be a series of talks. So again, we'll open up midday. Jason's going to present something. Finlay Future Sound Systems is going to present something. Rob Hordijk is going to come over again. The 5U Hordijk system, inventor of the Rungler and the Benjalin, if people aren't sure who he is. I give some sort of talk on synthesis. There was a ton of tips last time in his talk, so it should be good. And we'll probably do some sort of live 3-module challenge, open mic thing like last year. Turn up, we'll get your system up, we'll get your system into the PA. They've just upgraded the subs in that room as well. It's not a piddly little PA system. It's a really serious bit of kit. We can maybe talk about it another time. But yeah, any last questions? Really last call for questions before we kind of... I asked Vlad from VPME that makes Euclidean circles if he was coming. He can't make it. Boo to Vlad. Maybe you can send over his Euclidean sign. He had a great sign at Superbooth. Marcus has joined us, a kind of mutual friend, late to the party. Hey, Marcus. Marcus has some really cool music coming. People should watch out for his stuff. Dan's going to be there from DPW. Right. You in the chat, Dan. Future Sound System is Finlay's company. Ken. Finlay Shakespeare. Amazing name. Matt Gain says he's thinking of starting a modular on the spot in Cleveland. That's cool. I think the only thing with modular on the spot, the couple of rules is it that it has to be outdoors and it has to be all modular? Is that it? I think that's the whole, you can call it and brand it as such and it will be promoted and shared as modular on the spot if it's outdoor or free. Outdoor, free and modular, I think are the only things. Leeds was amazing last year, especially the local wildlife. I don't know if Marcus is on about the pigeons in Leeds, or he actually ventured outside of Leeds. But yeah, cool. Well, I think that's it for questions. I think we've hit everything. Yes. Yeah, perfect. Well, thanks for your time, Jason.
Thanks for having me on. This is great.
For anyone curious about the oscillators or anything else, we could probably do another chat when Symphonion's out, you know, whenever that comes, about like Harmonic, Symphonion, the quantizers.
Yeah, there'll be many to come. So yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of keeping things musical side, because as a company, you've really hit that on the head. You've really hit that on the head as well.
Thanks.
The Harmonic's great. So yeah, cool. Marcus said the local wildlife, he meant the young lady that was outside Scanner's room. Unfortunately, Scanner didn't sleep very well. When I think the people of Leeds and Bradford, wherever they were from, were trying to give people, I don't know, people from Newcastle a run from their money. They tend to be known for getting pretty wrecked. Then again, you're in Glasgow. People must get just as wrecked.
Oh, they start fires. Have you seen that? The Glasgow School of Art has burnt down again.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, 4 years ago, like they were just nearing like completing the renovations to reopen. I think it's wrecked. I think it's gone. Like, this is the Charles Rennie Mackintosh building that's now burnt out. So,
wow,
quite disappointing. But yeah,
yeah, God. Well, yeah. So Instruo, you've got a new. It's Instruo.media, but is it also
Instruo.media? The new URL is instruomodular.com. I'm going to keep both going. I think Instruo.media, eventually, it's going to cover more sort of interdisciplinary art stuff as well. But there'll be crossover. Like they'll link to each other. There is an entire new website in the works as well. This is kind of a bit of a placeholder. Like, there's going to be a sort of buy it now web store, but then again, I'm still figuring out what the best route is going to be, because I'm going to be stocked in stores reasonably soon. So, yeah, but all the information's there, and all the emails come straight to me. So, any questions, just get in touch.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so next intro video from me, Troika or Harmonic, I guess. Jason can tell me which one's more important. Check out the TSL video, the Tonal video. Go watch the CSL video as well on the Instruo page. I'll link all of those. Anyone that's watched this far, not live, we've kept going because of the live chat here, but anyone that's not watching live, ask questions in the comments. If I can't answer, I'll ask Jason specifically, and we'll get back to you. But yeah, I think that's it. Everything covered, and yeah, I look forward to that new several octave feeding oscillator.
Yeah, it's a sketch. I think there's something there. I think it'll be fun. Used to the circuit, but
Is the Tarn free out now? You said they're out, right?
Yes, yeah, they're available. £96 plus postage, depending where you are. Yeah, I'm building them in small batches, but they're a quick turnaround. So an order gets placed, I can normally build it within a day or two.
And I will say, just because I don't like trying to blow any guest's trumpet too much, but the website for Tarn, we were talking about being a clipper or a shaper or for feedback. The website does give examples of how to use it.
Yeah.
The fact that you're using stuff, you're making music, you're performing, involved in that kind of scene, it really shows with the modules. And I think the quality of that in sound and use and interface comes across, and the fact that examples are on the site, and that stuff that needs a manual has a manual, and that kind of thing.
There's a better draft. There's an actual harmony manual in the works, because so far it's been the video that is named directly for our friend Marcus. So
yeah,
there's I think Ben, I think I sent you the initial draft, so it's a bit rough around the edges, but it's getting there. I'm passing that on to a graphic designer to make it look pretty. But if anyone needs it in the meantime, let me know. I can email that out.
Yeah, I mean, the video serves as a guide. I remember you sending it. Well, Marcus got in touch with me first, and he was just I won't swear too much, but it was, you know, effing hell. Check this out. The video serves its purpose of demonstrating it. Hopefully I will as well when I do the video soon. But the manual that you've done has musical examples, talks about intervals, talks about scales. It doesn't say you need to learn it. It's not trying to teach you music theory if you don't want to, but at the same time, if you do want to understand what's going on, it's there. Yeah. It's a really useful tool. That needs to be said. It's not, because the thing with the Harmonig is I love just throwing random voltages out and letting it give me 4 voice chords in key, and being able to repunch in what notes are in that key. So even if it's a full major scale, I can pull notes out, add notes in, really intelligently work with all that. And the manual's kind of great in that you don't have to know the theory if you don't want, but it tells you it as well. If you feel comfortable with music theory, it's like having a little friend to jam with, and you can tell it to do things and you know what the outcome's going to be in a musical sense. If you don't know what you're doing, it's incredibly musical just to throw signals at, which I kind of like taking a break. I teach quite a lot of theory. It's kind of nice just not even paying attention and just letting it do its thing.
Yeah, I did it so that I could just, when I'm wanting to compose something more chordal, more harmonic, you know, I don't need to worry about what tonal center I'm in, what mode, you know, if I'm keeping modal, I can just plug something in, try it out, just hold down a button, change the mode, and I've got a completely different harmonic architecture that is then automatically keeping diatonic, keeping it within a, you know, a consistent musical key structure. So it's fun for experimenting with. I found, which because, you know, it's kind of just a collection of how I approach music theory, how I implement for, you know, that sort of composition, and, you know, it does the heavy lifting, so I don't need to worry about if I'm okay. So that's going to be the dominant in this mode. Except, you know, it means I can just patch in and just punch buttons, and lucky mistakes happen. So.
Yeah. Andy Morris in the chat said running its outputs through a 4-channel switch is nice. That is really nice with a sequential switch, because you've got an incredibly musical arpeggiator if you clock a sequential switch to flick between the outs. I'll definitely put that in my video.
Cool, great.
But it does, I don't want to get too gushy about it, but someone said, it might have been the Harmonig, it might have even been an older video of a different quantizer. You know, I just saw the F button light up on your quantizer, but it sounds like a slightly sharp flat C. Why is that? Is the quantizer not right? And I wasn't demoing the quantizer. I would have probably tuned it in properly if I was. I was demonstrating something else. You could just see it in the shot. And I was like, well, I don't tune my oscillators to anything unless I'm playing to something, or it's to a recording that I want to repeat, or a specific MIDI out of the DAW, or there's acoustic instruments involved. It just tunes to what I want, and then I will just sequence pitch above that low point. And I know, not to say I'm working on a similar level musically, but Detachi, whose album System's fantastic, said the same thing. I did an interview with him, which is on DivKidmodular.com, I think. It's on my site, which needs a really big update. It's a text interview, not a video. And I was talking about his tuning for his chords. He just said, well, you know, I maybe sometimes think I want a minor third and a 7 in this one, or I want a 9 chord, or whatever the intervals are. But he says, I don't know what it's tuned to. There's no aspect of that's a B flat or that's a C.
Yeah, it's all based on whatever the fundamental of the oscillator is.
Yeah, and I find working that way kind of makes more sense. Being a drummer, first and foremost, I'm the butt of all jokes about not understanding music, but then being a guitar player, you tend to think in shapes as opposed to notes. You know a certain pattern under the fingers. Anywhere up and down that neck is a certain set of intervals. It works perfectly to just be thinking that way, and this allows you to do it. I'm going to go off on a massive tangent about Harmonig, so I'm going to cut myself off and we'll call it a day. But yeah, thanks for your time, Jason. Any questions, ask us. And yeah, links in the description. If I don't put a link in, do call me on it. Say, where's that thing that you mentioned an hour in or whatever? I'll get a link. Great. Thanks for your time, Jason. And
Thanks for having me.
We'll speak to you. Cheers. Bye.